Welcome back to the Parent Edit Club Med podcast. Today I have Suzy Reading, a chartered psychologist, mother, author, yoga teacher, and wellbeing expert. Suzy's one of the UK's leading voices on self-care and advocacy. We are going to today explore themes of resilience, self-advocacy, how to build confidence in children. Would you say that there is like a particular age or a tipping point that you typically see confidence as something that parents need to focus on, or they need to start applying a bit more time and thought to? Would it be like starting school, or?
I think it should be on our radar all the time, because essentially what we're doing is we're preparing our kids for life.
Yeah.
And confidence is a really big part of that.
How do you think that parents can build confidence in children?
I think confidence comes from knowing yourself and knowing how your strengths and your skills can lend themselves to particular settings, contexts, activities. Helping our kids know themselves is a really powerful starting point. I think it's also interesting to think about confidence isn't just something that happens in your head. I would suggest that it's a function of head, heart, and body. Using your body can be a really powerful way to boost your sense of personal power. So there are lots of different ways in.
If someone said to you, I'm always telling my child how amazing they are, am I going to give them this sense of like, I'm greater than everyone else?
I think we want to be more targeted with the kind of praise that we give our children. It doesn't always want to be contingent on outcome. I think if we can praise effort, diligence,
Yes,
and if we can get a little bit more specific, rather than you are this or you are that, let's get granular about this. And this is what comes back to helping our kids know themselves, praising the fact that there's attention to detail or there's tenacity. You really stuck with that. That's fantastic. I think we want to raise compassionate, grounded kids that don't just think of themselves. They're also mindful of other people.
Failure is quite a biggie, I think, because we want to protect our children from anything bad in life. You know, when you're an adult, there's now a lot of rhetoric around failing is good, you only learn from your failures.
Yeah.
So true. But in children, how are we teaching them about failure?
Failure is a normal, natural part of life. We can't eliminate failure. There will be things that we do naturally and effortlessly well. There will be things that we find challenging. There are things in life where our strengths are rewarded. And there are other things where, this thing doesn't come naturally and I've got to do it anyway. And it might not come off as I'd like. This is just part of life. So I think we need to be preparing our kids for that reality. In terms of skill acquisition, I think we can start really young. And I think it's also just acknowledging that we all have different strengths and we all have things that challenge us. Embrace the areas where we get to shine, and then let's acknowledge where perhaps this isn't our strength, but someone else has a turn. And I think that can be a really healthy way to approach it. But from my perspective, failure is information. It's a clue that something you tried, not everything you tried, something you tried didn't quite work. So it's all information moving us in the direction of understanding ourselves better, understanding other people better, understanding the world better. If we can have a different relationship with it, I think that's really healthy. So helping our kids embrace it and look at it as this is an opportunity to get curious rather than feeling like failure is some kind of personal deficit.
How will I handle a situation? My child's always comparing themselves to their sibling or a close friend. One child is going to be better than the other at something at some point. So how do I navigate that?
Your sibling shines in this way, and we want to be happy for them shining in that way. But this is where you get to shine. We don't compare an apple to an orange. Apples are great for these reasons. Oranges are great for these reasons. So I think if we can just encourage our kids to notice when they're comparing themselves and saying, actually, you don't actually need to compare yourself. It's absolutely fine for your sibling to have this strength. But look at what you do well.
How do you teach children about validating feelings without overthinking and dwelling on them? Millennial parents, we are taught validate the feeling, tell them it's okay to feel the thing.
Yes.
Which I agree with, but how do you not encourage them to sit in negative feelings while validating them? This summer, stop planning and start living. Club Med's all-inclusive family resorts take care of everything from gourmet dining to kids clubs and water sports. So all you have to do is make memories with your little ones. One destination, every adventure you could possibly imagine. That's Club Med. Search Club Med Family Holidays today to find your next perfect family holiday.
When it comes to emotional health, our job as parents is to absolutely validate our children's emotional experience. We want to help them understand, to be able to articulate what it is that we're feeling. So the way that we can do that is helping them develop a broad language to be able to describe their feelings. That's a really useful starting point. Once we've validated our kids' emotions, it's okay for us to give them feedback on what an appropriate emotional response is, but also how intense an emotional response is. Now, clearly, this is something that we have more latitude to do as our children get older, but it's perfectly fine for us to give our children feedback on what constitutes appropriate responses. When they're really little, this doesn't apply.
There's no controlling that.
No. Now, the fact is we can validate the presence of an emotion, but we still want to have a conversation with our kids about, so for example, the presence of anxiety, presence of worry. Now, we can validate the feeling. We can say, yeah, absolutely, it sounds like you're feeling quite worried. But let's take a look. Is there danger present? This thing that you're worried about, is that real? So you can validate an emotion without necessarily saying that emotion is the gospel truth. I want to encourage people to move away from labeling feelings as either positive or negative. The fact is we need all of our feelings. So for example, anger, if we call that a negative emotion, well, sometimes we feel bad for having it. So let's call the emotions what they are. Anger, fear, anxiety, happiness. Let's call them what they are, but let's encourage our kids to sort of take a look at, hang on, do I need to feel this? Do I need to feel fearful in this situation? There's a time and a place for emotional expression, but I think it's also okay to say to our kids, do you know what? We've aired that and it's all right. I think we now need to shift our attention onto something else because you don't necessarily need to indulge it. We want to try and bring balance to our kids' sort of emotional expression.
By not wanting to indulge it, you're also not wanting to dismiss it, because I think that has its own problems.
Absolutely.
This is the question for millennial parents. How do we not take our own traumas and wounds? And, we might not have even had a traumatic childhood, blanket term. But how do we not take negative patterns forwards? If we're aware of them, we might not be aware of them.
That's
but if
the
we
thing.
are aware of them,
yeah, we've got to get aware, don't we? Because you can't change something that you're not conscious of. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. How else do we create the time and space to take a look at what motivates our behavior? What are the underlying beliefs here? What's driving us? We need to hold these things up to the light. There's a really simple phrase that I'm quite enjoying using. Says who? This thing that I feel like I must do. Hang on, says who? And actually, does that serve me? And can I allow myself maybe a little bit more of a flexible expression of my values here? Can I get to choose what this looks like?
I think that summarizes a lot of parenting, is that you are exposed. You realize very quickly, maybe not the first 6 months of your first, you're just surviving. But after that, you are like, okay, I need to reevaluate who I am, how I'm going to do this, what I want my children to think of me. I see this thing quite a lot pop up, and they will sit across the table from someone one day and describe the childhood they had. Not all of these things get me, but sometimes they do, and that one really gets me, because I think, how do I describe my own childhood? Is that what I want my children to say about me? And it's that kind of legacy thing.
Yes.
I think is really a big question. And having had conversations with other parents, find it is an exposing experience.
Yeah, it's very, very vulnerable. And I think it's not until you have children that sometimes you reflect on experiences that you've had that you think, wow. And I would say, as a therapist and coach, I have a lot of people coming to me saying, I had a very normal and happy childhood. However, there are some experiences there that have really stuck with me, that have had a significant impact on how I feel about myself, or how I feel about my emotions, or how I feel about my needs. And this is not about a character assassination of their parents, but it is about holding up to the light some of these societal norms that actually were really unhelpful. We need to examine, to what extent do we keep holding on to these beliefs?
With your own children, it's your chance to rewrite the story how you want, but you only have one chance. So if you think you're not doing it right, or you'd like to do it differently, think seeking out that kind of help, or that person that might give you a bit more confidence.
Even just having that time in the diary where there's an opportunity for you to get your needs on the radar. It's squeezed out of life, isn't it? We're constantly, forecasting that person's needs, this person needs, this is
always coming second as a parent. You often say we can't pour from an empty cup. Can a parent's own well-being and self-care impact a child's confidence and emotional security?
The last thing I want is to put more burden on parents. I want parents to be able to put a hand on their heart and say, oh my goodness, I appreciate me. I'm doing the best I can here. Certainly what I have experienced as a parent, the mantra that I came to live by virtue of a collision of life events, I became a mum at the same time as losing my dad to motor neurone disease. And it was an incredibly taxing set of variables. And what I learned from that experience is it doesn't matter how skilled you are, life is sometimes going to knock you flat on your ass regardless. I also, in that being born a mother, I wanted to give every cell and fibre to my baby, and that the selfless mother archetype felt like that was what I had to, aspire to. I learnt hard and fast my depletion served nobody and that my replenishment served everyone. And I had to get really skilled at nourishing myself in different ways, because the things that I would normally do to nourish myself in that collision of life events became completely inaccessible to me. You don't have the same time or energy or financial freedom. You don't have the same physical freedom. I needed a whole new set of skills and practices. The more resourced you are as a parent, the greater access we have to any of those things that you hold dear. So instead of aiming to be the selfless parent, let's think about what is it that you are aspiring to show up as when you're wanting to be selfless. So for me, it's things like I want to be present, I want to be patient, I want to be available, I want to be caring, I want to be loving. But do you know what? When I deny my needs, when I don't let myself get a look in, I haven't got a hope in hell of being any of those things. So screw being selfless. Let's ask ourselves, what kind of resourcing do we need to be able to show up as that? And please make space for it. And just however you can. And I think this is really, really important. I've written 9 books about self-care.
If you've ever wanted a family holiday where everything is sorted, from the food to the dining to the kids clubs, then Club Med is it. From snorkeling to archery to canoeing, it's perfect for families looking to disconnect and reconnect with each other away from those pesky screens. Check out clubmed.co.uk today and treat you and the family to a premium all-inclusive summer holiday today.
But never have I ever said it's about shouldering your burden alone. We do need to take some kind of responsibility for engaging in healthy habits. No one's going to do it for us. But I also want people to know that it's not about doing it all on your own. We also need to receive. And that's really, really important. That's why I wrote How to Be Selfish, because for us to receive, generally we are going to have to open our mouths and articulate our feelings and our needs so that other people can understand us better and meet our needs. But I think it's just so vital that when we're looking at parental well-being, this is not just about, oh, you haven't looked after yourself well enough. We've got to take a look at the societal and contextual issues here. Where are we supporting parents well enough? And how is it that we can do a better job of caring for parents?
It's been one of my favourite comments to receive since being a parent is, well, make sure you look after you.
Yeah.
How? When I'm sleep deprived, I've got places to go, people to see, commitments. Dinner to cook, a house to keep tidy, some sort of semblance of a marriage to scrap onto here. How am I meant to look after myself? Like, it just seems like a very counterintuitive, unhelpful thing to say. What can I do to make that better for you? Is there...
Yes. How can I support you?
I'm sure lots of mothers will resonate with that. It can be really hard to ask for help as a parent.
And I think it depends historically on how your requests have been met. Now, for some people, they've learnt that, shut down that, don't ask because it's not okay. Other people have been encouraged to. So there's a lot of unpicking to do. It's not just a matter of get confident and speak up. For some people, they haven't felt safe to do that because it hasn't been safe.
What would you say then to a parent who feels guilty about prioritising themselves?
Oh, okay. So guilt, here's the thing. So we've talked about we need to validate the presence of our children's emotions. Well, let's validate the presence of our own emotions. But I think it's interesting with guilt because so often we feel guilty when we're not actually doing anything wrong. Again, like we talked about.
Mum guilt.
Yeah, we validate the presence of anxiety, but we take a look at, is there a threat here? Guilt might be present, but actually, hang on. Are you transgressing your moral code? Or are we holding ourselves to some kind of standard that we wouldn't dream of holding any other human being? And can we allow ourselves to be included in that kind of standard instead of holding us here and everyone else there? Interesting thing with guilt is let it be there. Just don't let it derail you. Let it go along for the ride. You don't have to get rid of it. The presence of guilt is there to make you check in and say, hang on, is this thing that I'm about to do or I'm doing, is it congruent with what matters to me? And if it is, you do it anyway, even in the presence of guilt. From what I see, the feeling of worth actually comes from the nourishing action. So don't wait to feel worthy of it. Go and do it. Fill yourself back up, replenish yourself, nourish yourself. And the feeling of worth comes from that tenderness.
You're going to feel more guilty for snapping at someone in your family than you are for going for a walk alone for 20 minutes to just
It's
be
the
a better
gift that
person when
keeps
you
on
come back in the
giving.
door.
Yes.
You're going to feel worse if you shout or
Yes.
if they go to bed on an argument or something
Yes.
than if you just said, I need a mental minute.
And let's also model these things for our kids. I do not want to model selflessness for my daughter.
No.
I want to model self-honouring, self-respect, self-advocacy, because if you don't teach your children how to speak up for themselves, how are they meant to do it in adulthood? If they don't see us doing it, how can they feel like it's an okay thing to do? We need to be comfortable with our own messy humanity for our children to be able to embrace theirs. But of course, like we're saying, this is sort of dependent on the season of parenthood that we're in. You know, when you're in those early years, it's not like you can just roll over and say, not now, honey. But actually now I can say to my team, sweetheart, if I do that, I'm going to get depleted and it's not sustainable. So there's more of a, you know, we're a team, but that's a function of the season that you're in.
The tangible advice would be for people to honour the season that they're in.
Yes.
You can't negotiate with the toddler about whether mummy needs to take a deep breath outside and not be pestered.
Yeah.
They're going to follow you and pester you anyway. A teenager, you can probably have that conversation. And
You
it's
can,
healthy
and you
for them
should.
to see that.
Definitely. You should have conversations about, you know, this is my needs. Otherwise, how will we ever raise compassionate children who are aware of the needs of others?
Stand Tall Like a Mountain is a mindfulness book for children. What was the inspiration?
I'd written Self-Care Revolution, which was all about my framework of self-care. I'd written that for grown-ups. I wanted to write something that had a family-based theme. So it's using the same framework, but looking at practices that were suitable for parents and kids to engage in together, designed for parents to read with their kids, but they're family-based practices. So I wanted the self-care to sort of acknowledge the very real constraints that we find ourselves in when we become parents, because self-care has to take a whole different shape, doesn't it? But we can look at it as these are things that we can engage in together. It doesn't have to be, I have to go off here on my own and do this thing. This is something that we can do together. And I also wanted to look at sort of the emotional first aid toolkits that we could be sharing with our kids. So that's where that book came from.
Do you feel that because you're a psychologist, there's a lot of pressure to get parenting right?
Motherhood is like a constant process in letting go, isn't it?
I find expectations.
Yes.
Let them go again.
Yes.
Get rid of them.
Yes.
And you're
standards here. Yeah, exactly. As a psychologist, I thought, erroneously, I'd be really good at motherhood because I'm really good at understanding people. I'm good at encouraging. I'm good at nurturing. What a baptism of fire that was. I would say that those skills are certainly coming to the fore now that my children are a little bit older. So I have a nearly 16-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. I think now that my skills are sort of like, I get to use the
They're
good
coming
stuff
into
now.
their prime. This is
But,
nice.
oh my God, for those first couple of
turn.
years, it was like, Jesus, what was I thinking?
Club Med isn't just a holiday. It's where your family discovers something new every day. World-class resorts, unlimited activities, and everything all-inclusive. So the whole family is happy from sunrise to sunset. Your next great family adventure starts at clubmed.co.uk.
We want to do right by our kids. I don't think anyone's immune from that. And we should be motivated, shouldn't we? It doesn't need to tip into self-flagellation, character assassination territory, does it?
No.
I think if we can be a little bit more gentle with ourselves, a little bit of tenderness goes an awful long way.
Do you notice that there is correlation between children needing similar things to adults in terms of connection?
Yeah. Yeah,
Would you say
absolutely.
that there are things that we all need throughout all stages of our life, and that's something you
100%.
see?
That's a really interesting question, actually. So if you were to ask most people what human needs are, we'd say things like, well, we all need to sleep, to eat, we need to hydrate ourselves, we probably need some kind of social connection. We also need time in nature. We need to move our bodies. But we all of us, regardless of age, we need to feel a sense of validation. We need to be witnessed. We need to feel understood. We need a sense of belonging. We need to be cared for. It doesn't matter how old you are. We all need these things.
One of the services that you offer
Mhm.
is like a walk and talk therapy session. Taking that into parenting, do you find that a good time to connect with children is often out of the home or
Yeah.
in their safe space?
Yeah.
A good time to connect and have those conversations about feelings and thoughts and actions and behaviours is often on the hoof, on a walk in a park or
Totally.
something?
That is a great observation. Absolutely. You know, we were talking earlier about giving our children feedback about appropriate and emotional responses. Seldom in the heat of the moment is it the right time to do that. Yeah, we've got to wait for that energetic charge to diminish. When we're out and about in nature's beauty, now, obviously we're also getting the impact of fresh air, just the colour green is soothing for us, a sense of spaciousness. But also when you're walking, the fact that you're already doing something means that we don't have the mental capacity to sort of like second guess ourselves or kind of get in our own way. So I think as parents, that's really helpful. But also there's this feeling of energetic shared experience, like you're in it together, you're walking side by side. So I think that's a really wonderful way to have potentially difficult conversations. Take it out into nature's beauty, walk together. And I think it also, you know, it taps us into a feeling of creativity, responsiveness, perspective. And because it's calming our nervous system, it's going to help us have those challenging conversations.
Now, if you were to leave our listeners with one piece of advice about resilience and confidence in children, what is one thing they can do whilst raising their children to really build those key life skills that many of us still struggle with in adulthood?
The most fundamental skill to our children having a sense of belief in not only their skills, now that's confidence, but belief in themselves, which is self-esteem, self-worth, is being compassionate with themselves. Yeah. Self-compassion is an awareness of your own struggles coupled with a motivation to want to help yourself either avoid that struggle or alleviate that struggle. So before we were talking about the fundamental of confidence is knowing yourself. Really, self-compassion is being connected with self. It's knowing what you need and how you feel. So it's encouraging our kids to check in, to stay connected with themselves and to honor themselves. And part of that self-compassion is forgiving ourselves for when we make inevitable errors, but we can forgive ourselves and that we can learn and we can grow. And from that comes the skills of self-kindness and speaking to ourselves with dignity and respect. All of these skills wrap themselves up beautifully in resilience and confidence.
Thank you so much. It's been a very insightful conversation. Where can people find you online?
Come and hang out with me on Instagram. I post a daily love note. I want my page to feel like a warm hug. So every day there's something there to just foster our own self-compassion.
And then in terms of books,
For parents, Self-Care Revolution. For families, Stand Tall Like a Mountain. But for kids, I've got a book called This Book Will Help Make You Happy, which has 50 practices that are around confidence, resilience, and happiness. And it's written for kids to read themselves because kids quite often don't necessarily want it always to be spoon-fed by mum and dad. They want a resource that they can make off with themselves.
nice.
And it's a beautiful illustrated book for 8 to 12-year-olds. So there's something there for
Gorgeous.
everyone.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Such a pleasure, Mary. Thank you so much for having me.